Yo! What's up, diggity dogs?
You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another Top 10 video, technically, although it's only a Top 10 because there's exactly 10 South Park video games. Not including the pinball game, but yes, including the unreleased Game Boy Color game, because I have played that. And, the pinball game is not really a video game, it's literally just a pinball machine, but I have played it, and it's obviously not a video game. It's fun, it's a fun pinball game with some cool references, and they had one at a local arcade one time when I went, so, you know, it wasn't terrible, but that's not going to be included. But the unreleased Game Boy Color game is, although the 3D unreleased GTA-style game will not, because, number one, it's far less complete, and number two, I've never played it. I have played all but one game on this list, but I'm still including it to make it a top 10, and also because I already have kind of my own preconceptions about it. But to be fair, I haven't played it, so full disclosure. Another game that won't be on this list is South Park Mega Millionaire, which is another mobile game that I actually didn't know about until I was editing the video, but apparently it was discontinued pretty quickly, and it was made back in 2009, so there's not a whole lot of info I can find on it other than a plot synopsis on the wiki. There's probably some gameplay somewhere out there. I didn't really bother doing digging, but yeah, that's not going to be on the list. But yeah, my friend recently completed South Park The Stick of Truth, and it really made me, yearn for a time when South Park was still good, when I still loved it. And I'm not just talking, like, with the current eventy stuff, I'm talking about just the world of South Park just doesn't feel the same. The characters just don't feel the same. And playing Stick of Truth reminded me, it took me back to, back when I first played it. Back when South Park was still good. Like, both in the real world and in South Park itself, the world of that time no longer exists. South Park isn't what it was at the time, and the real world isn't what it was at the time. So it got me feeling nostalgic, so I decided to make this. But also keep in mind this list is very personalized for my rankings. Some of them will make sense, but some of them are very odd. But if you've been watching me for a while, it's probably not that unpredictable. But anyway, let's just jump in. So at number 10, we have the only game on this list that I haven't actually played, and that's South Park Snow Day. Now, Snow Day looks like shit. Like, honestly, it does not appeal to me at all. It's really a shame that the game that came out following up after The Stick of Truth and Fractured Butthole and even Phone Destroyer would be so radically inferior to that, at least from what I've seen. By aesthetic, by gameplay style, it just looks terrible. I have no interest in playing it. Because for some reason, they took a step backwards and went back to 3D graphics, and granted, I like some of the ones with 3D graphics, but it was a weird stylistic choice after the previous two, technically three if you count Phone Destroyer, games would let you feel like you're playing an episode of the show stylistically, like it looked like you're playing the show. Now, I think they have some cutscenes in this game that look more like the show, but it just looks gross with the actual gameplay, like the 3D models look like shit. Not to mention, they decided to release it as a roguelike rather than doing another RPG. And granted, full disclosure, I'm not the biggest fan of roguelikes. There's a couple that I've enjoyed, like I enjoyed Binding of Isaac to a degree, but even then I'm not the hugest fan. It's just a genre I've never really vibed with. I'm not the biggest fan of procedural generation, and I have very mixed feelings of the all-in-one-go thing. I think it can work. I mean, hell, I'm trying to do Deathless Runs of Conquer. But nevertheless, I haven't played it, so I can't really go into much more detail than that. It just doesn't look like my cup of tea. At number 9, we have the lowest ranked one that I've actually played, and I don't entirely hate it, but that's Phone Destroyer. Phone Destroyer, gameplay-wise, I'm not a fan of, because it's one of those games where you just put units on the board and then they play for you. You don't actually play the game. Like, it plays itself. The characters you put on the screen will just act and do things on their own, and then you just place them on the board. Not only that, but it's also a freemium game, where it has a pay-to-win dynamic, it's got a ton of microtransactions, and it actually has different endings depending on how much money you put into it. So I think that's kinda lame and gross, which I really don't like. And I don't really plan to play it again. But there were some laughs I had the one time I played it, which I did as 2 videos. And I don't entirely hate it, because it had some of the humor still, but it's definitely not one that I would go back and play again. Alright, next up we have the unreleased Game Boy Color game. This is a pretty simplistic game where you have to rescue Kenny each level by solving puzzles, and it's fun enough. I've enjoyed it. It's a fun little game. It sucks that it didn't get released, and I have done a stream of it. I do need to play more. I have not beat it, but I don't feel like it has the same fun factor that a lot of these other ones do. But I do still like it, and it is a shame it didn't get released. It is a fun one. It's a fun little curio to play. Alright, next up we have South Park Rally. Now this game is one that is not particularly liked by a lot of people. It's a South Park kart racer. It's a lot of fun. There is some uniqueness to the types of races they have. It's pretty fucking janky. It's got 3D graphics that are very old, which are also very janky, but, you know, they're kind of charming. I actually like the 3D graphics in this and the other 3D South Park game. So, for whatever reason, with this, I'm okay with it, because it's got that old, kind of stanky 2000s fucking graphics going for it. So I'm a little bit more forgiving of it than I am with Snow Day. The game can be incredibly frustrating with how janky it is, but it does have a fun variety of characters, and it has some pretty unique race types in it. So overall, I do enjoy South Park Rally. It's a fun little kart racer that's, you know, a fun little thing to play for a little bit at a time. Alright, at number 6, we have Tennerman's Revenge. Now, I like this game a lot. It is a platformer, and you play as the 4 boys, each with their own unique abilities, to try and get back Cartman's hard drive that Scott Tenorman stole, and you have to go through the future and fight these ginger robots, and I haven't actually beat the game. I've gotten pretty far in it. I've done a stream or 2 of it forever ago, and it is a fun game. But for whatever reason, like, I'll play it for a few hours, have fun, and then just forget about it and never play it. There's not anything wrong with it. Although the platforming can get kind of annoying, so that's probably part of it. It's delisted. You can't get it anymore, so good fucking luck with that. This game you cannot get anymore. Because not only is the Xbox 360 store gone, so even if it wasn't delisted, you couldn't get it, but it's been delisted for years prior to that. But it is a fun South Park game, it's a fun platformer, and I do plan to get back to it and finish playing it. Alright, at number 5 we have South Park. It's simply just called South Park. It's the one that's a first-person shooter, and it's also super janky like South Park Rally is. But I'm not gonna lie, I enjoy it. Again, it's got a lot of charm to it. It's one of those old licensed games on PS1. The controls are fucking garbage, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty fun. It's got unique weapons. It's got a cow launcher. But a large part of why this is so high on the list is nostalgia. It's a nostalgia factor, honestly. I used to play this game at my neighbor's house before I was even allowed to watch South Park, and we used to fight each other on the multiplayer of it. So I do quite enjoy this game. It's very nostalgic. It's janky as hell. It's got, you know, old, outdated, and really awful-looking 3D graphics, but again, they're charming, and I find them fun. Again, unlike the 3D graphics of Snow Day, which just to me aren't doing it. These ones are old and janky and stupid, and I like that. Alright, at number 4, we have my personal favorite of the PS1 and N64 era of South Park games, and that is Chef's Love Shack. Now, Chef's Love Shack is not one that everybody's going to love. This is one that I very personally like, because I'm a big fan of trivia. I like trivia games. I like things like Jackbox, and, you know, You Don't Know Jack in general. And, you know, just trivia games are just a lot of fun. So as someone who's a fan of that, some of the questions are really fucking obscure shit that I wouldn't normally know. But, you know, there are some that fall into that category that I have memorized. Chef's Love Shack is a fun game to play when I want to blow off steam. You may notice when I want to wind down a stream, or if I'm just doing a chill, short stream, not really doing much else, not wanting to think too much about anything, I'll play Chef's Love Shack. Because, you know, the trivia's fun, the mini-games are a lot of fun. Like, it's got an asteroids minigame, it's got a whack-a-mole minigame where you whack a zombie. It's got my personal favorite minigame, Pizza Patrol, which is a parody of Paperboy on the NES. And, you know, it's got voices from the characters, and it actually looks more like the show than the other games of that era did, because it's got the 2D South Park style to it. It looks really, you know, the graphics are not the best. They're really compressed, especially on the PS1 version. And the PS1 version has terrible load times. But it's a game that I can always go back to and unwind. And it's one that I don't really have to think a whole lot about. Like, I know it's trivia, so I have to think if I don't know the answer. But you know what I mean. It's a good game for me to personally blow off steam. It's not one that everybody's gonna like, but it's a fun little party trivia game that I like playing. Alright, at number 3 is where we're starting to get really good. South Park Let's Go Tower Defense Play. I fucking love this game. As the title would imply, it's a tower defense game where you build different kinds of towers to fight against enemies, but you can also throw snowballs at them to fight them as well. But the game itself has great humor. It has clips from the show that you unlock as you progress. It's got a good selection of playable characters. Not like a ton, but it has a pretty good selection. and it's got a fun range of levels, and each character has their own abilities. There's even a character you can't get anymore, being Professor Chaos, which Duty has, and I am super fucking jealous of, because Professor Chaos was one that you got as a redeem code for Xbox Live. When you bought certain copies of Season 13 at Best Buy, it would have the Professor Chaos code in it. And when I bought Season 13, I bought it, I think, at FYE used, so obviously it didn't have the Professor Chaos code, but I don't even think it was one of the specific copies that was supposed to have it. But I have told this story before, but I was the number 3 player on the leaderboard at the peak of the game. It was me, my friend Duty, who I actually met through the game, and then my friend South Park, who I also met in the game. South Park, whose gamertag was literally the name of the game. He was the number 1 player in the world. Duty was the number 2 player in the world, and I was the number 3. So they carried me, I'm not going to pretend they didn't. One of the things we did in that game constantly was we would try and outdo our high scores, so we would replay the game over and over again to get the best scores, and then we got to a point where we would help people get the Man Bear Pig achievement, which was the hardest achievement to get in the game, which that's actually how I met Duty in South Park, is I was playing online, and these guys were in the game, and they're like, hey, you know, we can help you get the Man Bear Pig achievement. And then they did, and then that's when I teamed up with them, and we all started playing over and over and over again, and then we would help other people get the achievement. So not only is it a fun game, but I actually got pretty good at it, to the point where I was number 3 on the leaderboard for years. Again, with my friends being at 1 and 2. So we were a party that would always, like, get really high scores in the game. Now, I'm rusty as fuck at it now, which is pretty evident in my most recent playthrough, but it's a nostalgic thing looking back, playing the game so often with my friends online. And it's just something that really takes me back to a better time. Alright, next up we have number 2, South Park, The Fractured Butthole. Number 1 and 2 could easily be switched. Like, I go back and forth all the time. I literally did a whole video talking about this. And number 1 is pretty obviously going to be Stick of Truth, if you couldn't tell from what hasn't been shown, but we'll get to that when I get to number 1. Fractured Butthole. It does have better gameplay than the Stick of Truth, like, as far as, like, smoothness with how it runs and mechanics and things like that. It has a lot of quality of life improvements as well. In my opinion, the Fractured Butthole was the last truly great South Park thing we had. It was, like, in a lot of ways a send-off for the series to me. It was released during Season 21, so there was only 2 bad seasons out, in my opinion, being Season 18 and Season 20. So there was stuff from those seasons in it, but the game was still great. It still had a lot of great South Park stuff. It did have a more modernized version of the town because of some of the stuff that happened in the show, you know, like Soto Sopa and Shitipa Town. So there is that. But nevertheless, it is still, like, the last truly great South Park thing. It's loaded with references, it's got great gameplay, and it's a fun superhero RPG where you play as Coon and Friends, with the new kid as the main character. It's a great sequel and follow-up to the Stick of Truth, and I absolutely love playing it. It's also got an interesting difficulty curve. Most of the game is super, super easy when you know what you're doing. Like, you can beat most bosses really easily, but then you get to the DLC bosses and they're really fucking tough. And another thing that it does have the edge on Stick of Truth is it does have DLCs, which Stick of Truth didn't have any. And it's also longer than the Stick of Truth by quite a bit. Stick of Truth is like 11 hours. Fractured Butthole is like 20 hours, so pretty big difference, almost double. But that brings me on to number 1, and as I said, it is the Stick of Truth. The Stick of Truth, the reason I place it above the Fractured Butthole is two reasons. Number 1 is it's still got the South Park I know and love. It's still got the characters and the settings the way that I loved it at its peak. Because it was released in 2014. There wasn't a single bad season yet. There were bad episodes, sure, but there were no bad seasons yet. Stick of Truth was when South Park was still going super strong. It came out during Season 17, which had a tie-in episode being the ending of it, the Black Friday trilogy. And it's amazing that this game turned out as good as it did, being stuck in development hell because its publisher went out of business, being THQ. So then it got picked up by Deep Silver, who published it. This game got delayed and delayed and delayed, and then it finally came out. It was actually a pretty late 360 game to come out in 2014. The Xbox One was already out, and this game was released on the 360 still, because it had been delayed so much. But this was at a time where I didn't have an Xbox One and didn't have any intention of getting one. I was still playing on my 360 regularly. Anyway, that's one of the reasons, right, is that it's still the South Park I know and love, and it's still the setting before it had started to get, in my opinion, bad. The second reason is the story, I think, is just better. The story of Stick of Truth, I just think, is more fun and more representative of South Park than the Fractured But Whole was. It's not by a country mile, they both have pretty fun stories, but I do think Stick of Truth does have the slightly better story, and I have a lot more fun with it. The way the characters are introduced, the way the different nighttime mechanics work, like the first night you're doing the alien mission, which I love, then the second night you're doing the gnome mission, then the third night you're raiding Clyde's fortress. I love that. It's a very short, simplistic game that's basically like one big long episode of the show. Not to mention, it had a way better tie-in episode because it had the 3-part Black Friday trilogy tying into it, whereas the Fractured But Whole had franchise prequel, which is honestly one of the worst episodes of South Park that tied into it just because it was boring and it was all just clearly to promote the game. Whereas the Black Friday trilogy is actually really fun. Stick of Truth doesn't have any real DLC. I got all the quote-unquote DLC, which is just cosmetic stuff. And, you know, the system is different than the Fractured But Whole. Like, Fractured But Whole does have better mechanics in a lot of ways. However, I do really like the simplicity of the Stick of Truth's gameplay, even though it can be kind of janky at times. And there's pros and cons to their approach. For instance, Stick of Truth items, like you wear, like your clothes and your weapons, all have different stats. Whereas in Fractured But Whole, it's more focused on your stats that you set on your character, and then costumes are just cosmetic. And the way the turns work are different in this, because it lets you use an item and then attack each turn, whereas Fractured But Whole, for the most part, it's one action per turn, not including movement, because there's a tile system in Fractured But Whole, which there isn't in Stick of Truth. Stick of Truth does have very surface-level, simplistic gameplay that's very easy. Both these games are actually really, really easy. But nevertheless, I do like the simplicity of it. I do like this more fun and well-written story. Like I said, I think the story is just a little bit more well-written in Stick of Truth. And I also like that South Park is still South Park at the time. Like I said, Fractured But Whole is still South Park. It's like I said, it's like the send-off to South Park for me. But it still has a lot of the stuff I don't like. There were still a couple of bad seasons already out at the time. It already had some things I didn't like some of the changes to the town. And, you know, that's fine, but again, those things to me are just signs of when the show was starting to decline. And those things themselves aren't necessarily a part of that, but it is emblematic of it, so that is one thing that holds Fractured But Whole back a little bit for me. Again, I switch back and forth. There's some days where I prefer Fractured But Whole, because I really do think the gameplay is pretty radically improved. But Stick of Truth, I always go back to. It's a go-to for me. I fucking love the Stick of Truth. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed. This has been Fugitive Red Eye. Have a good one. Toodles.
That sucked. I'm sure glad that's over with.
Bye.
What a grand adventure this has been. God bless us, everyone.
God, yeah. As soon as I can walk again, I'm gonna kick that kid's ass.
Subscribe to Fugitive Red Eye.